Thank you for joining us. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar this evening. We are so delighted you could join. My name is Anne Awori. I'm the General Manager of the American Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to give special thanks to the International Finance Corporation for accepting to partner with us in this webinar today. This evening, we are very privileged to have none other than the resident representative for the IFC, Rwanda and Uganda to help us understand. At this point, I would like to invite the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, Mike Davis, to give us a few remarks.
All right, well, thank you guys. We appreciate it. So as I was saying, it's great to see IFC in Uganda. Personally, I've worked with IFC before, and I have some experience with that. I'd like to welcome Dan for the IFC representative from Uganda and Rwanda. I think a little bit of background here is what is the World Bank? Just so that everybody knows, it's an international financial institution providing loans and grants to governments for the purpose of pursuing capital projects. Underneath the World Bank is the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. It's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group to advance economic development by investing in for-profit and commercial projects for poverty reduction and promoting development. So what does it do? It provides debt equity financing services, helps companies face risk measures while not participating in management. They currently have a portfolio of over 5 billion in sub-Saharan Africa. And in the region, they focus on financial inclusion, agribusiness, tourism, property, health and education, and fragile and conflict situations. Dan is, as I said, is the IFC rep for Uganda and Rwanda. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are you still on the board of directors for Makerere University?
I think you are. No. The term ended, and they've never appointed another one for the last 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just as kind of some background for everyone else is IFC has been involved in Uganda for a very long time. They were part of the financing for Bujagali Dam. They've also been involved in the SME Academy for COVID survival. They've also invested in the Savannah Fund, which provides financing for corporations and SMEs in Uganda. They're also involved in Ascent Capital's Rift Valley Fund. They've also invested in 3 well-known companies here, a private transportation company, a telecommunications firm, and a private healthcare entity. So they invest heavily for development projects, but private sector development projects. So from my side, like a couple of things, as I said, I've worked with IFC before. I think a couple of clarifications that are definitely needed here is, what are you guys looking for in an investment into a private sector entity? How can our members access these opportunities? What are the minimum quantums? What is the minimum amount? Obviously Uganda private sector is not a massive entity. From a private equity standpoint, most private equity firms are looking for a $25 million to $50 million ticket, which means your valuation of your company is $100 million, not shillings, $100 million. So where does IFC fit in, and how can smaller companies access that? What kind of impact is the case of this young man who's suing a local bank for doing a syndicated loan? How will that impact how IFC operates? Because that will essentially stop syndicated loans if he succeeds in getting the judges to basically adhere to his case. How will that impact IFC? Because at the end of the day, IFC does syndicated loans. And then finally, I know there's been a background with AmCham, especially with IFC in Egypt, where they've worked together in partnership to do some collaborative funding opportunities to educate people and to work together to provide common workspaces and other information sharing activities. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at that I think that our membership would be very interested in, especially in particular the judicial case that was delayed yesterday, because that directly impacts all investment in Uganda, especially IFC investment. So From there, I guess I'll hand it over to you, Dan, to kind of give us a little bit more explanation of everything and hopefully answer some questions and have a great Q&A with our team.
Okay, interesting on that particular case. I'll go right ahead. Being a client of the IFC, so it becomes a bit more interesting. Okay, distinguished listeners, I think this is more for private sector staff. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for granting me this opportunity. I'm really very honored to speak to you today. Prior to my role here, I was actually IFC resident representative based in Dar for 8 years. And I used to interact a lot with an American Chamber of Commerce in Tanzania. So I was really wondering why I've never been able to interact in Uganda with the AmCham. So it's a great opportunity for me. Even here, I'm based in Rwanda. You know, I'm a Ugandan, so I can't really work out of country. I'm based in Rwanda. But before I start, I'd like to ask whether my colleagues are connected as well. Recently, 7 months ago, we recruited a country officer who's based in Kampala called Anita. Anita, you're on?
Yes, I'm online.
Okay. There are others who might have connected from Nairobi. If you have, please introduce yourselves quickly. Yeah. If anybody in Nairobi is on.
Hello, Dan. This is Evelyn Situma, Communications Officer at IFC. We have Mombeki on the line. Mombeki.
Good evening, I guess, everyone. This is Mombeki Barego, an investment officer with the regional office, currently in Dar es Salaam, but to be based in Nairobi, working from home at the moment.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So, you see, you've mentioned, surprisingly, you work for the IFC. So you've stated IFC is a member of the World Bank Group, and for over 6 decades, we've been advancing economic development, improving the lives of people by encouraging the growth of the private sector investments, especially in developing and emerging countries. We achieve this by creating markets, mobilizing other investors, and sharing expertise through advisory services. My main investment products, you mentioned a few of them, but I can run through it very quickly. Form of loans, equity, trade and commodity, finance, syndications, where we mobilize other interested investors to come for a common development need of an entity. We also have derivative and structured finance as a product, where we use it to hedge interest rates, get local currency and commodity price exposures for IFC. And then the last one I can mention here is blended finance, where we've used donor funds to crowd in private financing, especially in areas where we are de-risking, like now that our main theme is creating new markets. Sectors, you mentioned the sectors: financial markets, infrastructure, agribusiness and forestry, health and education, tourism, retail and property. Until recently, we used to support oil, gas and mining. Probably now we can only do mining. We signed on the Paris Protocol, which prohibits us from investing in upstream oil and gas ventures as on December 31st, 2019. So we can get involved in upstream fossil fuels ventures. You have to note that in case there are interested parties who are listening. So our strategy in Uganda is actually harmonized with the World Bank Group, as we are part of the group. So we prepare what we call a country partnership framework, which is aligned with the National Development Plan to the extent that is practically possible. Because one of the priorities for Uganda is the improvement of the business environment, increasing for competitiveness, employment, easing infrastructure constraints. And one of IFC's real focus is today raise income in rural areas and boost inclusive growth in urban areas. Yeah. So today's situation I want to talk about actually is the economy, Uganda economy. Like many other economies in the world, has been negatively impacted by the global COVID pandemic. So in order to support our existing clients when it started, IFC, to address their acute needs, IFC established an $8 billion financing fast-track COVID-19 finance facility to sustain economic activity and preserve jobs for our clients. This funding was designed to provide immediate liquidity to prevent the short-term damage. That was last year around June, July, when actually COVID was, everybody realized that this was a real thing and the impact was being noted. So we moved very quickly. Today, we can use the same facility to consider projects which are totally new, non-existing. The only thing that is not a fast track, it has to go through our usual due diligence and based on our investment criteria. Again, staying in the COVID pandemic environment which we live in today, through our long partnerships, Uganda's health sector was a beneficiary of $4 million financing support through IMG, International Medical Group. It's a subsidiary of SEALS Healthcare, which is domiciled in Mauritius, and it operates in Uganda as IHK. It runs our international hospital, Kampala, and 17 clinics across Uganda, serving over 300,000 patients annually. So this financing, we thought that it would help strengthen services at the hospital and clinics, allowing them to continue providing quality medical care, including free services to hundreds and thousands of patients in the country. I won't comment at this point, the Uganda healthcare situation is very challenging for many of the people, I think, who are in Uganda. Yeah. In addition, IFC also is considering a 12.5 million investment, and this is not confidential. Can you hear me? Okay. I hear some noises behind. I don't know whether they're Bairat or conversations. Anyway, we are considering 12.5 million investment in Abacus, which, it started producing IV, but it's a leading pharmaceutical manufacturer and distributor based in Uganda. Our support will help the company grow its distribution network within East Africa and diversify manufacturing capacity by adding a generic medicines production line. Away from healthcare, IFC is also intervening, offering interventions in the refugee space. This is totally new, I have to tell you that. Uganda, as you know, has a refugee population, which has grown rapidly. It's currently estimated around 1.4 million, making it the largest refugee host in Africa and third largest globally. In Uganda, IFC is providing refugee support in collaboration with other development partners, UNHCR, UNICEF, ILO, and the World Bank, and under the Prospects Initiatives, which is actually funded largely by the Netherlands, government of the Netherlands. So our key strands of intervention in the refugee space are market intelligence, really to assess potential private sector opportunities. Secondly, broader market level segment engagement, including studying the market potential for refugee hosting districts to better understand how the private sector can provide goods and services to refugees and their hosts. IFC is also actively seeking like-minded partner organizations and to provide the necessary support to clients. Most recently, I'm actually engaging myself with Mercy Corps, who also operate a lot in the northern region, to see whether we can structure some risk-sharing facilities for the low-income population. To inform IFC's country strategy going forward, our operations going forward is IFC is conducting what we call a Uganda Country Private Sector Diagnostic, or CPSD in short. This is the tool that guides our investment and strategic focus and is prepared in close collaboration with the government and the rest of the World Bank Group. We already see agribusiness, access to finance, renewable energy, and tourism as key sectors with excellent potential for development in Uganda. We look forward to working with our public and private sector partners to help reform and advance those sectors for the benefit of all. Overall, IFC's current portfolio in Uganda providing both investment and advisories in the range of slightly over 260 million, including the following, which Sir Davis had mentioned. We have investments in infrastructure development, mainly in the energy sector, generation and distribution, in collaboration with private equity firms, including one from the United States. We bring strong credentials to the discussion around agribusiness and the grain sector in Uganda, where we've made investments in a company such as Grain Pulse. This is a joint venture of a German K+S, which is a renowned fertilizer distributor worldwide, and Savannah Commodities, a local entity. Thirdly, we are also trying to establish public-private partnership, PPPs, for an integrated management of solid waste within Kampala under KCCA mandate, and another PP advisory for Kampala Ginger Express, a major highway expected to improve economic prospects in Uganda. So going forward, we'll proactively develop agribusiness projects through investment and advisory, look out for investment climate programs, and then through engagement with government, enhance agriculture productivity with a special focus on food security and addressing the lack of market access by smallholder farmers through a wholesale approach, linking integrators and to raw material suppliers. In conclusion, IFC remains committed to providing solutions that lay the foundation for sustainable and inclusive economic growth through direct investments and advisory services in the private sector. Thank you, and I look forward to engage with you to hear even ideas of how IFC can best work with the chamber and other private sector partners in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan, for giving us those insights. And we are looking forward to working with IFC as well, as we are mainly private sector organization. So we look forward to see how we can plug into the opportunities that you have available there. I would like to open up the discussions. If anyone has a question, please use the chat. Mike?
And can I go back to my original question, or one of my questions? How do you think, this young man is suing the bank because he doesn't want to pay, which essentially is based on the basis of a syndicated loan, which for those on the call that don't understand that Ugandan banks don't have enough money. Therefore, they do a syndicated loan, which means there's a local bank, in this case, DTB Bank, which is the leader of the loan, and they get funding from outside, and then they aggregate a loan to give it to a local business or business entity, and then basically are able to provide enough capital for that loan. And this is similar to what IFC does in my past experience. How do you think that kind of obviously, well, as you know, the judge yesterday basically ruled that the previous judge didn't know what he was doing and has to go back for retrial. How do you think that's going to impact international funding and foreign direct investment in Uganda when if syndicated loans are basically banned from the country?
Okay, I can answer that very quickly. I can say that even the financial institution which is involved in this particular case. Can you hear me? Yeah, we've worked with it over the years. It's one thing I didn't mention, that when we are working to support financial markets, given the size of businesses in a country like Uganda, we work with existing local financial institutions, the likes of DTB, DFCU Bank, Bank of Africa, and others. We're still trying to make sure we get more partnerships. Previously, we even worked with MFIs, microfinance institutions. But to focus on this particular case, is going to be a judgment on Uganda, whether you can have international finance come into the country. Uganda's financial sector, to say the least, is not the most developed. It's pretty shallow. It's so hard for even, I mean, my colleague is on, to get a deal, meaning financing, where the balance sheet can take the kind of amount of money which we are financing in Kenyan banks. Kenyan banks, you know the announcement, the leading banks take about 150 million in that range. The first three banks can easily borrow that. I think in Uganda, my best shot ever, I'm not sure, I'm still trying real hard to make sure that I can provide $30 million, we can provide $30 million to an entity and maybe another 20 or 10, but just because that's the nature of the financial sector. So this case, which actually even concerns one of our particular clients, we send a strong signal. First of all, locally, it will increase the cost of money because it becomes a risky venture, lending to business community in Uganda. So I won't go too much in detail since it's a case before court, but it's a very, very big risk to the country. And I hope the judicial system in Uganda, to the extent it depends on who is handling the case, I hope that they won't be compromised. There have been many cases in the commercial court in particular. I think you saw some changes. I don't want to go in details or speculate, but many things will happen. So this is a judgment call on Uganda's judicial system, and again, the financial sector, the future, whether it's going to be attracting financial, international finance in a time when the whole world is in need of a lot of financing. So you just put yourself in at the back of the queue and then increase the country risk. Yeah, thank you. That's my comment. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anne?
There was a question on somebody was saying IFC had provided COVID grant. So I'm not aware of it, really. I don't know why. See, somebody can switch on and ask and say, because we don't have, as far as I know what I mentioned, the only COVID facility is with IHK. So we haven't provided any other. Maybe you're talking about the entire World Bank Group.
Ivan, would you like to clarify on that, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
There was an invitation, and there was one business in Uganda. I think it's the initial expression of or invitation to the grant was on social media. So there was an alleged invitation that IFC had joined hands with the Ministry of Finance of Uganda and launched that COVID-19 recovery grant. So an application was sent by a business. If you've got a local entity here, I can send the correspondence.
Yeah.
There's a lady. So this gentleman applied. The gentleman called Marcel Peter. When you go on LinkedIn, there's a Marcel Peter that appears there with IFC branding.
I'll go very straight in that, so we don't waste much time on it. The fact that I don't know about it, it was 80–90% a con, and it happens. We've had people having those kind of adverts and for jobs, and some people have paid the money. But to me, I was told about it, and I said, look, anything, unless my colleague in Uganda knows about it, which is most unlikely. But I was told, now I recall. And when we are inviting, we are private sector institution. We don't at all have to get any collaboration with the Minister of Finance. You understand? We're private sector institution. Very rarely do we have to deal with the government. So my quick guess was that it wasn't real. Yeah, I don't have it in my programs for Uganda, and believe me, all of it.
Thank you, Dan, for that clarification. I would like to request that whoever is attending this meeting, if you're not speaking, please kindly mute yourself so that we can have a seamless discussion. I've seen another question here, Dan, for you. Somebody's asking, is there a brochure of IFC in Uganda or Africa showcasing your products and contacts and the sectors that you're currently focusing in Uganda?
Actually, we're just updating it in light of the COVID impact. The environment has changed greatly. So we've had to make some adjustments to make sure that it still applies to the changed environment. Yeah. So Anita, I just take down the name, Anita Mwanda, who's on. She can mention how she can be reached. Maybe she'll provide her contact so that she can provide it. Yeah.
I'll provide the contacts and probably put my email.
Okay. All right. Is that fine?
If you can.
But in general, I can give you the generic, but if you want very Uganda specific, you have to hold on a little bit. Yeah. Somebody asked whether we support buyouts. We don't. We don't provide money for buying out businesses, but we've been able to support acquired businesses. And if they made or if they met IFC investment criteria over the sectors, yeah, that we can do, but we don't provide money for acquisition totally, that we are providing for your business. There have been cases where we've contributed, but then that has been in real, very strategic areas, and that is very rare. I think we did one related to production of products which are now being used in their fight against the COVID pandemic. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. There is somebody who is asking that IFC supports SMEs in developing countries. How has IFC supported SMEs in Uganda, and what is the volume of investment in SMEs?
Okay, we have to first define what an SME is. Mombeki, you can chip in if you want. But what we've done over the years, it depends on the period. Because of the complicated nature of, in terms of governance of SMEs, we never finance them directly. We finance through financial institutions. So in this case, we have provided SME products with technical assistance to Bank of Africa, to Diamond Trust Bank. We've provided to DFCU many times, not very recently. So that's the way we have done it. But financing an SME, unless by definition you are talking about number of employees or size of a balance sheet, we don't do it directly. It's not. We don't have the resources in terms of human resources to be able to manage the micro accounts. But increasingly, what we're doing is to work with financial institutions all across East Africa, including Uganda. So we've provided 10 million, one time $15 million to one of those banks I mentioned. One, because Uganda, the banks have a small balance sheet. I'm not laughing, it hurts me. $4 million, $5 million, whereas banks in these other regions, even when I worked in Tanzania, we are able to have a bank, the leading bank, to take up $120 million, which was focused on SMEs, plus women in businesses, trade finance. So, and then we're also able to provide, again, to another bank in Tanzania. In Kenya, we've provided a lot. What the message I'm trying to put across is not that we don't want to. It is that the banks, the Ugandan banks, they've got such small balance sheets. So many of them, when we start the conversation, like there's a finance trust for women, we went full distance. But many of them, I want to mention, they fall short of governance standards. And sometimes they're probably better off going to get more expensive money in many times from banks which are not going to ask lots of questions, banks which are going to recommend how you can best improve your staff in terms of engagement. Yeah. So it's a challenge to us, financial markets. I know my colleague who is on Mombeki, you can make a comment so I can only give, as I've told you, a 5 million here, Bank of Africa, 5 Diamond Trust, one it was 15 million. And DFC over the years, maybe totaling up to 20 to 30, but it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So the SME is a challenge. Mombeki, please go ahead. And because he has hands-on experience in this space. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, Dan. And I think you've explained it well and covered for the most part. But just to add on what you've said, so I think indirectly, as Dan has said, through the financial market space, IFC has worked with a range of SMEs from the micro to the small. And now this depends with the financial institutions that IFC is engaging with. For the more, you could say, medium-sized SME, being that in local terms, the big shop on the street, we're not saying a major industry, but a big shop on the street, typically they are serviced by commercial banks, and I think Dan has explained it. For the micro businesses, typically those are financed through microfinance institutions, the fincas and the likes. So we've had the engagements with the, I can't speak specifically for the Ugandans ones, particularly currently, but I know we've had engagement with the fincas of Uganda, because finca has a major office, I think, presence in Uganda as well, to service the micro enterprises. And also the way we service also is two parts. There's the direct financing, but also very highly on the advisory side to help these financial institutions to be able to improve their risk capacity to service micro enterprise. So advisory has done a lot of work to work with these financial institutions so that they can onboard these micro and small enterprises into their their portfolios, but also to provide risk sharing facilities for particular subsectors within SMEs that would benefit from engaging with these. So yes, so everything like Dan said is mostly through these financial intermediaries, not directly through IFC, but the financial intermediaries carry the whole gamut in Uganda. And as Daniel explained already, they are constrained by the capacity of these intermediaries to engage with IFC. IFC would love to do more, but sometimes the capacity of the intermediaries has been a constraint for us to do more. I think I'll stop it at that.
Thank you so much. Dan, there are still so many questions coming in.
Yeah.
I will continue.
I'm not saying,
because we still have some time.
Yeah, let me see, because it has not been seen.
Okay, there's someone, Jennifer.
Sorry.
Yeah. Do you want to respond to them?
You read out, because okay. I'm trying to see, yeah.
Okay, there are quite many. Jennifer is saying, could you please expand on the process of engaging IFC, including with respect to DD process, application of IFC performance standards, ETC, and financing thresholds?
Okay, right from the onset, because if I went too much, I won't go too much into detail, but generally, when you apply for IFC, you don't fill forms. You come with a project concept or feasibility studies, which goes through an early review. And we have what we call a concept meeting, which really is a quick decision whether we'll go ahead or we think that your idea or business proposal makes sense. If it does go through that level, I mean, after we've checked the investment criteria, please note that for each and every business, IFC has developed investment criteria, whether it is in chemical industries, fertilizers, name it. So it's very easy to run through, do what we call integrity due diligence, which normally is a challenge in many of the countries. Uganda is not an exception to get politically exposed persons. We are undercover from, represented by the lawyers. So we go through that IDD very early. At the first step, we must know who you were. Then we go through quickly to understand your investment experience and all that stuff. And then we have the concept and a very early review. After the early review, if we move forward, if we get a go ahead, we get guidance subject to A, B, and C, you may go ahead and do a due diligence. That's when we sign a mandate with the investor, maybe yourselves. And then after the due diligence, we have what we call a decision meeting, which is an investment review meeting. That is quite rigorous and is very detailed. So our due diligence takes stock of, among others, environmental and social and governance standards. Yeah. So over the years, IFC has developed environmental and social standards, which are referred to as IFC performance standards. And there are equally many banks in the world, big financial institutions, they've signed on accepting as the standards applicable. Sometimes you have resettlement. I can give you an example why Kampala Ginger Express is taking a long time, is that the biggest factor in moving ahead with that project is going to be resettlement of over 10,000 families. Same applied when we did Bujagali. There are challenges on E&S. So after all those we have internal staff specialists. In cases where we need, we get industrial specialists as consultants to add to our own due diligence, and then we get a decision. After the decision, we then engage again with you on the terms. We have a term sheet, a loan agreement after agreeing is issued. You sign off the loan agreement, but I've fast forwarded before you even get that loan agreement. When you have a decision and we've gone through the terms and have agreed, at that time we prepare a board paper, which goes to our board. Now, IFC is a member, is a World Bank Group member. So you find that we have executive directors who sit in DC representing all our countries, like Uganda falls under Africa. I forgot the abbreviation, but English speaking Africa. So there's somebody who sits on the board. And so all these projects are approved. The final approval is when it goes to the board. Prior to that, because of our ESG standards, we disclose. That's why I could talk about the existing projects like Abacus. It's gone to the board, $12.5 million and what it's going to do. We also have a integrated poultry project with an animal feeds, which is soon going to taken to the board. It's only when it's going to the board we disclose publicly that we are going to do that. I think that gives you roughly how it goes. If you want the details, I can even share with you what is really goes into the due diligence for any project, just in general terms, for manufacturing, healthcare, and so on. The other projects like power, energy, which are more sophisticated, that one I wouldn't provide. It's quite sophisticated. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. I think that will be quite helpful if you could share that, and then okay. we share it with our members.
I think send a message to Anita. Anita, I think she gave her contact point. I am reachable even through her. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We shall do that.
She's in Uganda for that. She's the first point of entry to working with the IFC. Yeah.
Wonderful. We shall definitely get in touch with Anita. Now, Dan, in your presentation earlier, you mentioned that one of your focus is on food security. And yes. Somebody is asking, okay, food security and improving access to markets. And they would like you to expand more in detail on this, on how you expect this to occur and IFC role in this whole initiative.
Okay, let me give a quick example, like from green, right from the start. We developed a project with an investor in the dairy industry. That is in Barara. It's called Pearl Dairy. And the brand is called Leto Milk. I'm sure you all know about it. But at the onset, we realized, of course, it's in the food area. I don't have the number of the per capita consumption of milk in Uganda. All I know is that it's one of the lowest in East Africa. Though we have a lot of milk production, people are not drinking milk. Anyway, let's go back. On this particular project, we realized that many of the suppliers of milk are small cattle keepers within the catchment. So what we did was to provide advisory services. These advisory services, what they do, you have a quality, there was a milk quality issue, you have an animal husbandry issue, and then as long as they had low quality product, they would not be able, their milk would not be accepted to this factory. So we also pushed the owners of this business to work through in that value chain. You know, this word is, the term is overused, but what we do is that we work with the value chain to make sure that you improve your quality standards. You go as far down as simple bookkeeping. In that way, they're able to sell to an aggregator who otherwise would not have considered taking their milk. In that way, you're providing access to market. That's the way it happens. And you can do that in maize. You're looking at the grains. Grain powers is into commodities. We're again providing the same line, the same approach. Here you have women who are involved in growing some of the crops, and fertilizer application is an issue. So we are providing advisory on the right amount of fertilizers, how it is applied, when organizing the women groups. When you organize the women groups, then they can tap access to finance, becomes easier. So that's when we say access to markets. Food security, because it's a food, that's obvious. But what we go deep down and we do really a lot of work. It was so successful with Power Dairy, it became the lowest cost producer, dairy producer, products producer in the region. So you know what happened? Because Kenya started blocking now. Those are regional trade issues, which we don't handle directly. I believe that they should have been able to handle it at a regional level, but it's taking too long. The same is applying. We have poultry now. So we have a program to scale up poultry because we realize food is cheap in Uganda. I believe that this maize aflatoxin issue is going to be sorted out. USAID has been assisting Kenya and Rwanda, but Uganda took long to make it an issue. It was just a wake-up call when the maize was thrown out of Kenya. So we are working on scaling up. Poultry is again food, and our approach is the same. You have to work through the value chain and find the issues. Then when you do the issues and you improve quality, improve amount, improve ability, just even small governance at that small level, those people can access microfinance institution. So what I'm looking forward, what I'm working hard on is to be able to fund many more financial institutions. We are talking with Opportunity Bank, Opportunity Bank. We've tried others, but I think with Opportunity, we are providing even technical assistance to it prior to us providing funds which they can use to assist all these small value chain operators. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's somebody who would like to know who the contact person for financing for the health sector is.
I think to make it easy for everybody, to be easy, we just got, we didn't have an office in Uganda. I was looking after Uganda from Dar es Salaam, Nairobi, different places. So right now we have the country officer, who is Anita, who is here. You direct many of your inquiries to her. Internally, she knows who the specialist best to handle those cases. But the other advantage of first contacting Anita is that she will help you first, make sure that your project fits a consideration by our specialists, who are, I think one is best, Kevin is best in Nairobi, but it's good that we have a look at it. Even I get involved in helping people, asking the basic questions so it doesn't go to the specialist and say that this one's far out. There's no evidence of any quality or any plans to improve quality. And we have advisory, which can improve both the quality standards at a pharmaceutical manufacturing entity, but also on health services providers. So we tailor that kind of assistance if we are going to provide funding for your business. Recently, IFC announced AMC. Mwambeki, you are familiar with it? I am, but I wanted you to talk about it. African medical equipment. This is a new, because of COVID, we are intervening. It's a risk facility, which is going to work with the banks. We are sharing 50% risk of banks who are lending to health service providers who are seeking, who borrow money to source equipment. So this is new. It was announced about 2 weeks ago. As usual, I'm still looking for partnerships in Uganda, which banks would be interested. You see, in Uganda, what's happening is that they have a ready borrower in the name of the government of Uganda. So it turns out very difficult for people to access loans, but nevertheless, it's not impossible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan.
You have that on. Mark the AMC, African Medical Equipment. I think that's the term we're using, but it's totally new. And I believe that once we get identified banks to work with, 50% risk share is serious stuff. Yeah, for banks to be pushed to lend to people in that space. Yeah.
All right, then you might have answered some of these, but there's a question here. Is there any way the IFC is supporting Uganda's capital market development?
We have engaged with the Capital Markets Authority, and at the moment, the program has not been rolled out, but it's in the works directly to work with them, because we are working with the Uganda Bankers Association, unrelated, but we are providing assistance to make sure that they can respond to these challenging times. So what we provided recently, which may be of interest to many of you, we had analytics regarding MSMEs, the present state of MSMEs and how COVID has affected them. And we provided this information to the Uganda Bankers Association to use in their approaches. We even recommended how they can approach their funding the needs of the MSMEs. To go back to your question, CMA is in the works. We have it coming on board probably in the next financial year starting July 1st. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And what about in terms of interests charged on the loans? Somebody has just sent me that.
Let me ask. Mwambeki, can you answer that and answer it? Because we don't have it set in stone. It's all dependent on what the business is, but let him talk through it. Yes.
I deliver the tough news. So interest is, thank you, Dan. Interest is, there's no answer to this per se, because the interest is driven by a number of factors. Some are more macro in their consideration, the country, the legal and regulatory environment, and that's why Dan was talking about the implications from the case. And some are driven based on the industry itself, the particular sector, and then you have the real micro as far as the business and the project itself. So those are all taken into consideration. But I think what's important to note is that IFC is a development financial institution. And where there are very strategic areas, we do try and make it more accommodative for the project to succeed. So we have, where it's probably this particular project is serving an underserved market, be it women, be it youth, be it smallholder farmers, be it COVID and health. Then there are ways that sometimes the capital or the assistance provided is blended with other technical assistance, or it's blended with other capital that has a developmental aspect to it. So there are ways that it can be more concessional than a typical commercial loan. So that is, and it also depends with the type of facility that the particular project is requesting. So it's not a straight off answer. I think if there's a developmental project out there with good potential and with some sustainability, then they should always see if IFC will be a good partner for it. And the fact of interest will be driven by many things. Some can be resolved perhaps before or even during, and some of them potentially can be accommodated through other facilities to make this palpable. So I think that's the only way I can put it. Hopefully I did justice to this question, Dan.
I'm just going to add, for example, when we supported PAL was scratched. It was just land and bush. So I know it pretty well. We were able to use IFC handles money from Global Alliance for Food Security program. So to blend, because there were small chain suppliers. If you ask a client, an investor, that we want you to be working with those small farmers, he's just going to tell you, look, it's too expensive. I can't deal. So what we did, we were able to blend. So the gas pre-money was, I think, at the cost of almost around 4%, but this was in foreign money. And I can't remember what we did, but by blending it, we made life. We pushed him to go into that space which otherwise he would not have gone into. So micro risk, which I talked about on this ongoing case in Uganda, country risk will go high. That to lend money in Uganda, you're taking a very high risk. So it's a micro risk plus the project risk and any other matter. Project depends on who you were, but we really try to make it work. We have a component we call IDA. You know, IDA is the interest-free money from the World Bank. So we have a component of that. We can blend with our own money, which is derived from our capital, and sometimes we mobilize from international capital markets to make sure that we make the project work. But we don't have it set in stone that this week is going to be X. We don't do that. It's post due diligence when we start getting a feel where you should be.
Yeah. I would like to extend my special thanks to you, Dan, and your team. Thank you. This is just the beginning. I know we are going to have a lot of initiatives together. So we really look forward to working more closely with you, like you have done with the AmCham in Egypt, Ethiopia, and TZ. So thank you. It's only the beginning. Unless there's somebody who has a burning question, any clarification for Dan, I will close this meeting in a few minutes.
Okay, I'm just putting there my email address. Somebody asked, yeah. On our part, we are really very happy that we can engage. Going forward, we have history of working with even companies which are within, from American origin. Just to give you the last story, in my early days, I joined IFC in '98. So you can wonder, I'm not sure whether you are walking in 1998, you could walk. You must have been a toddler if at all you're existing. But I worked on a project in Kabal, pyrethrum project. It was sponsored by an American, and it was to produce pyrethrum, supporting women growing in cooperatives. And it was a very challenging project. I'm just giving you just an example. He wanted to produce pyrethrum and export it to the US, but the challenges were the women organized in cooperatives. When they were paid for their crop, the men, they took away the money. So we faced supply risk. There was no more supply. So we had to be forced to go into semi-managing of plantations of pyrethrum, teach them banking. And so I've been there. Unfortunately, he passed away. We had to write off the loan. But over the years, we've worked in many. I mean, we liberalized the telecom sector in Uganda, financed Celtel, which led to the entry of MTN. We supported the first flower exporter, Nairoses in Mukono. We supported Clover Gemfish, the first processed fish exporters in the country. So we worked with Munuko Textiles, Madivani, and worked with Sugar Corporation of Lugazi, Uganda Tea Corporation. So we do, both big, but there are those ones who are that small scale, which I've told me, not typically small, medium, 5 million total cost kind of projects. We've worked with them historically. I just wanted to mention that in passing. And of course, we work with Umeme and Bijagali. We've heard of mergers. You've heard it, they're merging all the agencies in Uganda, so I don't know how it's going to work. It's another strong signal related to the area where Mr. Davis had mentioned. Even this merging is posing some real waves on how best we are going to be to intervene in the energy sector. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad for the opportunity and I look forward for more invitation. Yeah.
Thank you. There is somebody who has just sent me a question. Let's do this last one and then we shall close the meeting. We have 1 minute to go. Fred Kalema, do you want to ask that question yourself in a few seconds?
Sure. Dan, great session. With the high risk of investing in Uganda, how has IFC engaged with the MIGA to address the investment risks associated with the Uganda?
We do. We are talking with MIGA. I mean, MIGA, we work together very, very closely, even as far, I mean, as very recently last week, the head of Africa and another underwriter, we are talking about Uganda. But the key thing is that we have to get the viable, besides risk, viability is an issue. And increasingly, as you might have noticed, I'm not a politician, the environment, the business environment is under a lot of threat with increased, what we call is the time inconsistency of policies. The policy environment is changing, and increasingly it seems to be that it's centralized in one big office, and the technocratic lines don't seem to be having any chance of contributing. So to us, I'm just telling you the risk which we are seeing, that in Uganda, decision-making is very centralized, I can mention it, in the presidency, and which is becoming a little bit distanced, not a little bit, much distanced from technocratic lines, hence risk. MIGA is there. When called upon, they'll always be there. We're already looking at Kampala Ginger Express, whether they want to participate. Yeah. Other requests were from the oil sector, which we stopped. We don't do oil anymore.